This is a story about vans. It's vandemonium, it's fantastic, it's van-fabulous. It's all of those things. The van on my left is an LDV G10. The van on my right is an LDV Deliver 9. Strangely, the 9 is bigger than the 10, but don't worry about that too much. This is what we would call a medium van, and this is what we would call a large van. We get asked by tradies, courier drivers, delivery drivers, florists quite often, should I buy a ute or a van? But then if you make that decision to buy a van, coming up to the end of the financial year like it is now, what size van do you buy? Which one works better for your application? So forget that these are LDVs, they could be any brand. We're taking a look at the size here and where the size works better for different buyers. So first up, let's take a closer look at some of the important details that you'll need to know about two different classes of vans. Our G10 is priced from $32,621 before on-road costs, with the top hinged lift door as tested here. In this segment, the undisputed leader is the Toyota Hiace, which starts from $43,240 before on-road costs. The other segment favourite, the Peugeot Expert, starts from $36,490 before on-road costs, while the other notable mention in this segment is the Ford Transit Custom, which starts from $43,290 plus on-road costs. The Deliver 9 we're testing here is the long wheelbase automatic with the mid-roof option. And yes, that means there's an even taller, high roof model available. Pricing starts from $42,095 before on-road costs, undercutting key rivals by quite some margin. Volkswagen Crafter long wheelbase starts from $54,590 before on-road costs, while the Renault Master long wheelbase starts from $50,990 before on-road costs. The question here really comes down to which van best suits your needs, obviously, but if you're stepping up to the larger Deliver 9, you also need to ensure that it doesn't prevent you from doing things you need to do because it is so much bigger. As such, here are the key dimensions. The G10 is 5,168mm long compared to the D9 at 5,940mm. G10 is 1,980mm wide, while D9 is 2,466mm wide. G10 stands 1,928mm tall, compared to the D9 at 2,535mm, while the smaller van has a 3,198mm wheelbase, compared to the 3,760mm wheelbase of the D9. The turning circle is a consideration too, 11.8 metres for the smaller van against 14.2 metres for the Big Daddy. Now, aside from the physical size of these vans when you park them next to each other and look at the dimensions, the biggest difference, I reckon, is back here. Have a look at these doors. So this is the Deliver 9, of course. These doors open really, really wide, and if you're doing it a lot and you're going in and out of the back, this makes a huge difference. It's a lot easier to get into and out of. Don't forget, if you get forklift access and you have things delivered on pallets, you can get a forklift right up to here and then they can extend in. You could probably almost get 2 pallets with an extendable forklift in there, so that makes a big difference. If you're the kind of person that uses these vans to transport motorcycles, we had someone ring us the other day and ask about that. They wanted to set up a van for that purpose specifically. When you load a motorcycle, I do it from the other side, but just to show you here, you'd have your ramp there set up probably at this height, push the motorcycle up the ramp and just step into the van. So that makes it a lot easier. Then once you're in, if you take these ribs out of the equation, 6'1", you can actually stand up in here and there is room. Once you get in here, nice fully flat floor except for the wheel tubs. You've got decent sturdy tie downs on each side. And what I think the point to make in here is that if you buy this kind of van, chances are you're going to customise it to suit you. Mentioned the motorcycles before. You can quite easily have 2 motorcycles here and they'd come to about here somewhere, and then you've got room for shelving and storage, whatever else, or reverse it, shelving, storage forward, bikes at the back. I've got a couple of mates who transport their sons' go-karts around, so the little guys go go-kart racing. They have a tendency to build a shelving system so that you can put the go-kart on top and then run your tools at the front. What you do have is a sliding door down here as well. It's worth mentioning that, so that gives you access to this front section here pretty easily. I'd probably like windows in this door. I think if I'm driving around town, I've found this is a pretty big blind spot when you're turning left out of street, so I'd probably like windows there. You can have that done, that's not a problem. But aside from that, the flexibility and the size of this cabin space is really, really impressive. And I think if you're buying a van to customize it, to use it for a very specific purpose, you go for the bigger one. The Deliver 9 has, as you'd expect simply by looking at it, a whopping cargo area. The space is 3,413 millimetres long, 1,800 millimetres wide and 1,792 millimetres tall. There's a handy 1,366 millimetres between the wheel arches as well. First big difference at the back of the G10 is obviously this top hinging door. Now, while the Deliver 9 has all the benefits of those wide opening barn doors, in traffic, if you're in town running around doing a lot of deliveries, you probably don't want to have to open them out into a lane. They do, of course, open square rather than right around, but it's still a factor. This high hinging door is a good one, even though if you're taller than me, you might wallop your head on it when you're going in and out, so you need to keep that in mind. What it does do, if you're loading and unloading, you're standing under this out of the rain, out of the wind a little bit, you're a little bit more sheltered, and courier drivers tell us that's handy when you're jumping in and out of a van in bad weather. Once again, we use motorcycles as an example. You can still fit quite easily 2 motorcycles in here. You've got 6 decent tie-down points as well. They're quite handy. Lights, although not as good as those in the Deliver 9, these are old school lights. You get LED lighting in there, which is a little bit brighter. Oh, and I said 6 tie-downs. They're on the floor. You've actually got a couple up the sides as well, so that's handy also. Again, there are a lot of options for customizing this. You could have shelving through the back. You could have racks, you could have all types of different things. But the big difference with the G10, and I think one of its strongest points, is along the side here. So, where the Deliver 9 only gets 1 sliding door, the G10 gets 2. They're quite handy, and I'll tell you why. First of all, they open tight to the vehicle, so that's not a problem. But if you're doing a lot of deliveries in a day, and a lot of delivery drivers tell us that, they might load the van up at 7 in the morning and then they've got to go to a bunch of different stops. You can organise this in such a way that you can take the deliveries from different points of the vehicle. So, for example, between 7 and 8 a.m, you might take everything out of the front here, you close that door, and then for the next hour you're taking boxes from that side, and then you move to the back. I reckon this makes a big difference, especially around town, and I think that's where the G10 comes into its own. It's smaller, it's more agile, it's a little bit more functional if you're using shopping centre car parks and you're running around town a lot. The G10 makes clever use of a compact exterior with useful interior dimensions. It's 2,500 millimetres long, 1,590 millimetres wide at its widest point, and 1,270 millimetres tall. Between the wheel arches, you get 1,278 millimetres. But here are the High Ace's dimensions for reference. We've said for some time that the van segment was way off the pace, and there were a couple of areas where it was sadly lacking. And that takes into account the fact that you think the person who buys this van is spending almost all of their day in it. So they were never safe enough, and they were never good enough to drive, and they were never well equipped enough. Well, a lot of that has changed. So the van segment has really moved a long way forward, and you've seen that with our reviews of things like Toyota Hiace. It's really stepped the game up a long way. When you sit in this smaller LDV, yeah, sure, you don't have as much room as you do in the big one, and it does feel a little bit more compact in here, but you get a decent screen. You get a rear view camera that works, steering wheel controls that work. You get pretty decent storage. There's some good stuff here in between the seats, good door pockets, cup holders, bottle holders, things like that. All useful stuff if you live and work out of your van. The other factor that I think is worth mentioning here is the seats. These are particularly comfortable. They're actually really good seats. You'd probably be more likely to find them in a passenger car. So they're really good if you're spending long periods of time behind the wheel and doing longer drives. But the simple message is, if you spend long periods of time in your van and you use it for work every day, what you get for your money has moved up a notch, and it needed to. I can't believe I'm sitting in this Deliver 9 formulating excuses as to why I would buy the bigger van, but I think I would, and the reason is all of the storage that you get in here. So you've got 2 tiers of overhead storage. There's some back here and then there's some right above your head. You've got storage everywhere. Inside the dashboard, there's bottle holders, cup holders, places for phones and wallets. Inside the door pockets, there's useful storage. You get one that folds down in here, which is good for a clipboard or a notepad. As you do with the smaller van, you also get Apple CarPlay. You get a really big screen up atop the dash there. Interestingly, the camera in the Deliver 9 is not quite as clear as the one in the G10. Don't know why that is, but that's a factor. And the other point to make is that this is a really comfortable place to spend a working day. The seats are decent. Again, not quite as good as those in the G10. They're comfortable, but not quite as comfortable. You do get a bench, so you get seating for 3 adults. But what I really like about this van, and why I'm making excuses for the bigger one, is that it doesn't actually feel that big when you're here behind the wheel. Visibility's good. Aside from the window that I said I would like in that side there for better 3/4 visibility across the back, this is a pretty easy place to spend your day. It's useful, it's functional, and as we said with the G10, and this goes for most of the vans now across the segment, you're not missing out on anything that really should be standard. Gone are the days of clunky diesel engines and ancient petrol engines paired to agricultural manual gearboxes. The van segment has moved forward a long way in that sense, and these days, automatic gearboxes are favoured by most buyers. Diesel engines maintain favour, and in the case of both the G10 and Deliver 9, we found the diesels to be smooth, refined enough for the task at hand, and punchy. It's worth noting that a medium or small van will get into shopping centre car parks and underground loading zones with ease, where a large van won't provide that luxury. That's a large part of the purchasing process, and those of you needing to use a van in the inner city for deliveries should remember that the larger van will be less flexible. However, and it's an important point to make here, despite the size of the Deliver 9, it can be driven on a regular car licence, meaning it's a useful option for any business, especially those that have staff not licensed to drive heavy vehicles and large trucks. So behind the wheel of the G10, this is the medium van, so the smaller one on this particular test. And you might be thinking that this is a bit big, a bit cumbersome, a bit ungainly, and a little bit difficult for you to drive if this is your first step up into the van segment. Well, I can tell you for sure that that's not the case. This really isn't any different from behind the wheel than a large SUV. So if you've driven something like a Prado or a Pajero, one of those kinds of vehicles, even a vehicle like a Sorento or a Santa Fe, this is not that much more intimidating. A little bit of a longer wheelbase, but it's not like you're all of a sudden driving a big truck. It's actually pretty good to drive around town. It's got a good turning circle, diesel engine's good, the automatic's good. It just makes using these things and living with them a hell of a lot easier than they used to be. You don't have clunky old gearboxes and rubbish steering to deal with. So in terms of using this around town, in traffic, in tighter streets, it's really quite easy to drive. One thing that I think everybody should take into account when they buy a van, and I would almost exclusively have it in all vans, and we said that you don't have to consider that this is necessarily an LDV. This is just any medium van. So Hi-Ace, Renault Traffic, any of those kinds of vans, I would absolutely have a divider. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, it quietens it all down. There's less drumminess. It makes the cabin a more pleasurable place to be. And two, hell of a lot easier to heat and cool it. It's a lot easier for the air conditioning system to work having just to do this frontal cabin section. So I think that makes a difference. If it's standard, great. If it's on the options list, tick the box. Okay, so time for the large van, the Deliver 9. And does it feel large and bigger than the medium van we were driving before? Well, the short answer to that is yes, but crucially, I think, not necessarily from here behind the wheel. Good seating position, good visibility, steering's good. This again has pretty good turning circle, and it's pretty easy to maneuver around. But when you look down the side into the mirrors and you see how far back behind you the van disappears, you realise that this is a big van. They're good mirrors too, by the way. They make a really big difference, and it's a lot easier to manoeuvre them around. Again, I think the fact that all of those things that we've talked about that you have to do with a larger van, you need to take into account here, and it's a larger truck as well for that matter. You've got to take corners a little bit wider to make sure the rear wheel as it follows through doesn't hit the centre divider. You need to be aware that you're in a longer wheel-based vehicle. But does it feel intimidating to drive? No, absolutely not. This doesn't feel any more difficult to drive than the medium van does. Pretty easy to position it. And again, I think the fact that the visibility is as good as it is makes a big difference. So if you've decided that this segment is the one that works for you and you do need the space that this offers, there's nothing to really be intimidated of in driving this van around. Safety is the area where vans have made the biggest leap forward in recent times, and both LDVs tested here are well equipped. Van buyers should expect safety features that start to match passenger cars as each platform is updated. G10 gets ABS, electronic brake force distribution and emergency brake assist. There's also stability control with roll movement intervention. The newer Deliver 9 comes standard with ABS, stability control, electronic brake force distribution, brake assist, hill hold assist, AEB, adaptive cruise on automatic models and lane departure warning. Well, hopefully this has given you the ammunition you need to go in and buy the right van for the application that you have. Let us know in the comments section below if you're a tradie, if you're a courier, if you're a delivery driver. Let us know which van you'd choose, and of course if you've got questions, keep them coming and we will answer them for you. I didn't think I'd say this at the start of this test, but I reckon I'd take the big van. I'd take the Deliver 9. I love the fact that it's got so much flexibility in that area behind the seats. Obviously there's a lot you can do with it. And I really appreciate the fact that it doesn't feel as big as it is to drive. I think that's a real bonus. As always, hit like if you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you stay in touch with the CarAdvice Drive YouTube channel and all our new content. And head to our website for the full review.